At 11:52 p.m., the rain in Jackson Heights came down thin and mean, a freezing mist that slipped through seams and made every layer feel borrowed. Chloe Patel stood under the cracked plexiglass roof of the bus shelter in torn pharmacy scrubs that still smelled faintly of antiseptic and cheap hand soap. The hem dark with street water, one knee split where she had caught it on a supply cart 3 shifts earlier and never found time to mend it. Her shoes squelched each time she shifted her weight, and the damp had already reached her socks. She kept her tote pinned beneath her arm like somebody might run off with it, though nobody in that wind wanted anyone else's problems. The bus arrival board flickered between routes and error codes. 11 minutes, then 9, then back to 11, as if the city itself had lost patience with accuracy. She pulled her phone from her pocket, and the cracked screen lit her knuckles in fractured lines. $38.16 in her checking account. 2 overdue rent notices folded inside her tote. Paper gone soft from being read too often. A text from the landlord stamped 10:03 p.m. Final notice before action. Another from her mother at 8:12 p.m. Just a heart and the pill emoji because her mother hated sounding needy. Then the reminder alarm Chloe had set for herself vibrated again, small and relentless. Insulin refill. Tomorrow. Non-negotiable. She silenced it and immediately set another alarm for 6:40 a.m. because exhaustion had made her careless once last month, and she still woke up angry at herself for it. By the 3rd consecutive late shift that week, her sense of time had begun to blur at the edges. But medication schedules did not forgive blur. A gust pushed rain sideways into the shelter, and people tightened inward without speaking. A man in a puffer jacket stepped away from her as if poverty might stain. A woman in glossy boots looked at Chloe's scrub top, then at the scuffed tote, then back to her phone with the sharpened indifference of someone editing another person out of frame. 2 teenagers hunched over one set of earbuds and laughed at something on a screen, their laughter bright and unburdened. And Chloe felt a quick, guilty flare of resentment before it dissolved into fatigue. Her throat was raw from talking all day in a mask. Her lower back ached in one steady line. She could still feel the shape of pill bottles in her palms from evening inventory. Keys, phone, transit card? She checked each one by touch, then checked again. At 11:54, she opened her tote and pulled out the first overdue notice, flattening it against her thigh under the weak shelter light. Amount due, $1,940. Late fee assessed. She already knew every number and every line break, but she read it like repetition might generate cash. The second notice carried the same total with different language, colder language, legal language. She slid both back into the tote and zipped it shut, then held the zipper tab between her fingers until the metal warmed. She had worked 7 days out of 8. She had picked up per diem shifts at 2 clinics and 1 private pharmacy fill desk. She had sold a pair of silver bangles her grandmother had given her at 16. She had stopped buying coffee outside and begun carrying dry cereal in a sandwich bag for train rides. The math still failed. Across Roosevelt Avenue, a black sedan idled at the curb in front of a closed florist. Its interior light clicked on, then off, then on again as a back door opened and shut. She barely noticed it at first. Cars with dark glass and clean lines belonged to another universe, one where rain was an inconvenience and not an expense, because ruined shoes could be replaced without calculation. She looked away, focused on the bus board, and then caught herself shivering hard enough to clench her jaw. Her phone vibrated again, and this time it was her younger brother, Arav. "You on your way? Need me to stay up?" She typed with numb fingers. "No, sleep. Big quiz tomorrow. I'll check your alarm in the morning." His bubbles appeared, vanished, returned. "Love you, Chloe. Love you too." She tucked the phone back into her pocket and pressed her fingertips to her eyes for one steadying second. Arav was 16 and trying to look older lately, trying to carry grocery bags from the store without being asked, trying to cut his own sandwiches diagonally the way their father had done. Chloe saw every attempt and pretended not to, because pride was fragile and she needed him to keep his. A city bus roared past without stopping, full enough that faces were pressed to the fogged windows. The spray from its tires washed cold over the curb and soaked the cuff of her left scrub pant. She hissed through her teeth, then laughed once under her breath at the absurdity of reacting like there had been any dry fabric left to protect. "Rough night?" The question came from an older woman beside her, a grocery cashier Chloe recognized from 2 blocks over. The woman wore a plastic rain bonnet over carefully set curls and clutched a lunch bag to her chest. "Long week?" Chloe said. The woman's gaze softened when she noticed the torn seam at Chloe's knee. "You healthcare girls keep this city stitched together and still can't get a bus on time." Chloe smiled, tired and real. "Feels that way." The woman glanced toward the rain-slicked street. "You eat anything tonight?" "Protein bar." A pause. "Half a protein bar. That's not dinner." It was efficient. The woman made a noise that was almost a laugh, almost a reprimand. "Efficiency won't keep you standing." Before Chloe could answer, the woman's bus pulled in with a belch of diesel and light. She squeezed Chloe's forearm once, firm as a blessing, and boarded. Chloe watched the taillights disappear and found herself lonelier for the brief kindness. At 11:58, she checked her banking app again, as if 4 minutes could improve liquidity through pure denial. $38.16. Pending debit. Pharmacy copay, $12. Transit refill due in 2 days. Her rent balance glowed in her head like hazard paint. She imagined the landlord posting a formal notice on their apartment door where everyone on the floor could see it. She imagined her mother trying to peel it off before Arav left for school. She moved to the edge of the shelter and stared up the avenue for headlights. Rain hissed on asphalt. Steam rose from a subway grate and flattened in the wind. The neon from the laundromat across the intersection bled pink into puddles and turned the street into a warped mirror, each reflection trembling with passing traffic. Her shoulders were knotted from hours of standing and charting. She rolled them once and felt something click. She told herself she would stretch when she got home, then almost laughed again because home still included cooking rice for tomorrow, setting her mother's morning insulin where she would see it, checking Arav's geometry packet, washing one uniform top in the sink, and searching the couch cushions for enough quarters to run the building dryer once before dawn. On the far side of the avenue, the black sedan remained parked, wipers moving in patient arcs. Through the rain and glare, she could make out the silhouette of a man in the rear seat. He sat very still, not scrolling, not calling, just watching the street with the disciplined stillness of someone accustomed to waiting for outcomes. His coat looked dark and tailored, cut too well for this corner, the collar clean against the weather. She felt that observation pass over her without knowing why, then looked away before curiosity could become concern. At 12:01 a.m., her phone lit with a calendar alert she had forgotten to clear. Dad's birthday. The text on the screen was small and devastating. She swallowed against a sudden ache behind her ribs and closed the alert without ceremony. Her father had been gone for years, and grief no longer arrived as collapse. It arrived as interruption. A date, a scent, a strip of reflective tape on a paramedic jacket crossing an intersection. Tonight it arrived with rain and the weight of a scarf around her neck, navy wool gone thin at the edges. The one thing of his she still wore, because it still held warmth like a promise. She lifted the scarf to cover her mouth against the cold, and caught the faint trace of old smoke and detergent she always told herself was memory and not invention. Her bus was now marked delayed. The shelter emptied by degrees until only 3 people remained. Chloe, a delivery rider with fogged glasses, and a college student muttering at a dead phone battery. The avenue quieted into occasional engines and the steady wet rush of tires. Somewhere behind her, an ambulance siren rose and fell, receding toward the expressway. Chloe stepped out from under the shelter to get a better view of traffic. Rain dotted her lashes. She blinked it away and wrapped her arms around herself, one hand pressing automatically against the side of her tote where the rent notices sat folded like accusation. Her stomach cramped with hunger. Her wrists felt light in that dangerous way that came when she had gone too long on caffeine and protein dust. She breathed in for 4 counts, out for 6. The same pacing she taught anxious patients while pretending she did not need it herself. Headlights swung around the corner, not her route. Then, half a block down, a young man in an expensive charcoal wool coat stepped off the curb too fast. One hand braced to his side as though holding himself together by force of will. And Chloe saw the dark, wet spread soaking through his sleeve before she understood that it was blood. The sight of it snapped her fatigue into focus so sharply it almost hurt. The young man swayed once on the slick curb, his face gone waxy under the streetlight, and then his shoulder struck the bus shelter frame hard enough to ring the metal. A dark stain spread down the sleeve of his charcoal coat, too fast for rainwater, too thick, and Chloe was already moving before the delivery rider beside her understood what he was seeing. "Sir, sit down," she said, catching the man under his uninjured arm. "Now, keep pressure here." He tried to wave her off with the stubborn pride of someone used to command, not rescue. But his knees buckled, and she guided him onto the shelter bench. His breath came in clipped bursts. Up close, he looked younger than she had thought from a distance. Maybe 24. Expensive watch. Clean shave. Pupils wide with shock. The college student lifted his phone, camera pointed straight at them. "Call 911, Chloe said without looking up. "I'm recording," he replied, as if that were a help. "Call first, record later." She peeled back the soaked fabric enough to assess. The cut ran along the outside of his upper arm, deep enough to pour, but not spurting. Good, bad, manageable for 3 minutes, lethal for 30. She pressed her hand over the wound, and the young man hissed through his teeth. She needed cloth, pressure, elevation. His coat lining was slick with rain and blood, useless. Her scrub-top sleeve tore when she yanked at it, also useless. She reached for the only dry thing left on her and paused for half a second, fingers at the navy scarf wrapped twice around her throat. Her father's scarf, the one she had just lifted to her face minutes ago like a talisman. No decision took longer than that half-second. She unwound it, folded it into a thick pad, and planted it over the wound. "Hold this," she said, guiding his palm down. His hand trembled. He lost pressure instantly. "I can't," he whispered. "You can. Look at me. Breathe in, breathe out. Squeeze." He obeyed for 2 breaths, then faltered again. Chloe took over, using the rest of the scarf to cinch a tight wrap above and over the cut, knotting it with practiced force. The fabric darkened under her hands, but the flow slowed. Rain swept through the shelter in a cold sheet. Someone cursed and stepped back to avoid the mess on the pavement. A woman in a cream trench coat stared at Chloe's torn scrubs and then at the bleeding man's cufflinks, her expression sharpening into judgment. "Maybe don't let her touch him," the woman said to nobody and everybody. "You don't know who she is." Chloe didn't look up. "I'm the person keeping him conscious." Another voice came from behind her, male, annoyed, carrying the performative certainty of somebody who never missed a chance to rank strangers. People like her always jump in for attention. Heat flashed up Chloe's neck, humiliation and rage braided together, but her hands remained steady. "If anyone here has a clean cloth, I need it. If not, step back and give him air." No one moved for a beat. Then the grocery cashier from earlier, still on the sidewalk after missing her bus transfer, pushed through the cluster and handed Chloe a folded kitchen towel from her lunch bag. "Use this, baby." "Thank you." Chloe reinforced the bandage with the towel, tightened again, checked capillary refill in the man's fingers. Delayed, then improving. She kept talking so he would stay with her. "Name?" His lips parted. "Milo." "Milo, you with me?" He nodded once. "Good. Tell me if you feel dizzy." A black umbrella appeared at the edge of the shelter, held by a man in a dark suit with an earpiece. He took in the scene, eyes moving from Milo to Chloe to the knot at her wrist, then spoke quietly into his sleeve mic. Across Roosevelt, through rain and neon blur, the sedan's interior light clicked on again. The man in the rear seat remained still, face partially shadowed, gaze fixed on the shelter with the calm intensity of someone cataloging every variable. The college student finally made the emergency call. Speaker on because his battery warning kept screaming. Chloe caught the dispatcher's scripted questions and answered over him with clinical precision. Male, mid-20s, laceration to upper arm, heavy blood loss controlled with direct pressure, responsive, no obvious head trauma. Location Jackson Heights bus stop on Roosevelt near 79th. "Ambulance is en route," the student said after he hung up, breathless now that there was authority in the loop. Milo's eyes fluttered. He reached out blindly and his fingers clamped around Chloe's wrist, just above the pulse point. Grip surprisingly strong. "Nurse," he said, voice rough and urgent, as though it were a title that could anchor him. Not miss, not lady. Nurse. Rank, not service. A recognition that landed somewhere deep in her chest. "I'm here," she said. "Stay awake." The suit with the umbrella stepped closer, then stopped short as if held back by an unseen line. "Medical team is coming," he told Milo, but his attention stayed on Chloe. Respectful, evaluating. Sirens cut through the rain 2 blocks away, rising fast. The crowd shifted into that peculiar city choreography of curiosity and retreat. A few people kept filming, one angled for Chloe's face, and she turned her shoulder to block him. The grocery cashier swatted the phone down with open irritation. "Have some decency," she snapped. Paramedics arrived at 12:09 a.m., boots splashing through gutter water, orange rain covers flashing under streetlights. Chloe gave report in 40 seconds, concise and complete. Mechanism unknown. Blood loss significant. Improvised pressure wrap using scarf and towel. Patient alert but fading. One paramedic glanced at her torn scrubs, then at the clean knot she had tied. "You in the field?" "Per diem clinic and pharmacy." He gave a short nod that carried professional acknowledgement. "Good work." Milo's grip loosened as they transferred him to the stretcher, but he caught Chloe's sleeve once more. "Don't leave yet." "I can't ride with you," she said gently. "You're in good hands." His gaze drifted over her shoulder toward the far curb and sharpened with fear so sudden Chloe turned to follow it. She saw only rain, headlights, and the black sedan idling like patience-made steel. A second suited man emerged from the sedan and opened the rear door, sheltering the figure inside from the weather. For one clear second, Chloe saw him. Dark tailored coat, silver at one cuff, posture so controlled it seemed carved from the night itself. He didn't step into the rain. He watched her as paramedics loaded Milo, expression unreadable from this distance. Then he ducked into the car, and the doors shut with a quiet, expensive thud. By 12:14, the ambulance had gone, the crowd dissolved, and the cold hit Chloe all at once. Without the scarf, wind cut straight down her collar. Her hands started shaking now that there was nothing left to hold together. The delivery rider, suddenly awkward and kind, offered her a packet of tissues from his insulated bag. "You got blood on your sleeve." "Thank you." She wiped what she could, knowing the stain would set anyway. Her bus finally hissed to the curb at 12:17. She climbed aboard with wet shoes and no scarf, dropped her transit card twice because her fingers had gone numb, and took a seat near the rear heater that barely worked. As the bus pulled away, she looked out through fogged glass and caught one last glimpse of the black sedan turning into traffic 2 cars behind them, smooth and unhurried. She told herself it was a coincidence. Same direction, same late hour, same wet avenues funneling everyone home. The thought settled nowhere solid. The ride stretched across Queens in a haze of sodium light and exhaustion. Storefront shutters rattled in the wind. A bodega awning flapped loose, snapping like a flag. At every stop, cold poured in and emptied out with passengers. Chloe pressed her forehead to the window and replayed the shelter scene in clipped flashes. Blood blooming through wool, strangers muttering, Milo calling her nurse, the still man in the sedan not intervening and not leaving. At 12:39, she got off 2 blocks from her building because the route detour skipped her corner again. Rain had thickened to hard needles by then, bouncing off garbage can lids and pooling black in potholes. She hunched deeper into her scrub jacket and quickened her pace past the closed laundromat, the pawn shop gate, the bakery dark except for one backlight. Her building's front stoop came into view at the end of the block, peeling paint slick with water, one cracked planter listing to the side. A man stood at the curb in a valet uniform she recognized from the Belandi Hotel 4 avenues over, collar up, cap soaked through. He was too far from his district and too late for his shift. He watched her approach with an expression strained enough to look painful. When she reached him, he took 1/2 step forward, then stopped. His hands shook violently despite the freezing rain, not from temperature but from nerves stretched to a breaking point. "Miss Patel?" he said, voice barely audible under rain. She froze. "Do I know you?" He swallowed. His eyes flicked to the building entrance, then to the dark intersection behind her, then back. "I was told to deliver a message." "From who?" His jaw tightened. He seemed to fight himself for a full breath. "I can't say names out here." A pulse of unease moved through her, low and electric. "Then say the message." Before he could answer, headlights swept the curb and slowed. Not stopping, just slowing enough to be noticed. The valet's face blanched. He stepped back so quickly, his heel slipped off the curb. "Please go upstairs," he said. "Right now. And don't use the elevator." "Why?" His mouth opened, closed. "Because there are people in this neighborhood who smile before they hurt you." The car rolled on. Rain filled the silence it left behind. Chloe looked past him at her building door. The hallway light behind the wired glass should have cast a weak yellow rectangle onto the stoop. Tonight the glass was black. No bulb glow, no motion shadows from the stairwell. Only her own reflection blurred by water. She climbed the steps with her tote pressed tight to her ribs. The valet remained at the curb, rigid, as if an order pinned his feet in place. At the top of landing, she tried the door and felt it catch against something before giving way with a scrape. Inside, the entry smelled of damp plaster and old radiator heat, The fixture above the mailboxes hung open, bulb unscrewed and set carefully on the radiator cover below. Not broken, not stolen, deliberately removed. Somewhere, one floor up, footsteps moved, then stopped. Chloe stood in the dark with rain still dripping from her sleeves, listening to the building hold its breath. Chloe stood in the dark entryway, with rain dripping from her cuffs, one hand on the mailboxes to steady herself, listening for the next step above her. The building answered with old pipe knocks and radiator hiss, but the silence between those sounds felt staged, like someone had learned the rhythm of this hallway and chosen where to disappear inside it. She eased her phone from her pocket and thumbed on the flashlight. The cracked screen glowed at 12% battery, her reflection split by the fracture line. She angled the light up the stairwell and caught a wet shoe print on the second step, then another on the fourth, leading toward her floor. Her throat tightened. Arav, her mother. She called home through the app instead of direct line, speaker low, one ring, two. On the third ring, Arav answered in a groggy whisper. Chloe? Relief hit so hard her knees almost softened. Lock chain still on? Yeah, you said always. Don't open for anyone. I'm downstairs. His voice sharpened awake. What happened? Nothing yet. Stay in the bedroom with Ma. She ended the call and started up, one hand sliding along chipped paint, shoes squeaking on damp concrete. At the first landing, she paused and listened again. Nothing. On the second, she heard a floorboard creak near her apartment door and the soft metallic tap of something against railing. She raised the phone higher. Adrian Voss stepped into the cone of light with his usual polished calm. Raincoat collar neat, dark hair combed back as if he had come from a meeting instead of waiting in an unlit stairwell at midnight. He smiled with that careful civility he used when he wanted witnesses to remember him as reasonable. Ms. Patel, he said, voice mild. I was beginning to think you had decided not to come home. The bruise under her sleeve seemed to wake at the sound of him. Chloe stopped one stair below him and kept 2 steps of distance between their bodies. Get away from my door. Your door is relevant to my concerns, given your payment status. His gaze dropped to her bare throat, noticing the missing scarf. You look cold. She shifted her tote to shield her torso and kept her expression flat. You can send notices in daylight like everyone else. I did send notices. He drew a folded envelope from his coat pocket and tapped it against the railing. 2, actually. 2. You did not respond with funds, so now we discuss structure. She held the flashlight steady on his chest instead of his face. You're not a bank. His jaw twitched once, then smoothed. No, Ms. Patel. Banks require clean signatures and patient timelines. I acquired distressed obligations and solved them quickly. The hallway light fixture above them hung open, wires exposed, bulb missing. Deliberate. He saw her glance and smiled wider. Electrical issue, he said. Unsafe building. From inside her apartment, she heard the faint scrape of Arav moving furniture against the bedroom door, the way she had taught him during storms. Shame and pride cut through her at once. You need to leave. I need clarity, Adrian said. He stepped down one stair, close enough for expensive cologne and rainwater to blend in the damp heat. Your principal plus fees now totals $22,412. Tomorrow that number increases again. You forged the renewal terms. He gave a soft laugh. Allegations from people in arrears rarely travel far. He reached for her forearm. She pulled back, but his thumb still found the sore spot near last week's bruise, and pressed, subtle enough to deny, hard enough to warn. Do not make me repeat myself in front of your family, he said quietly. I dislike unpleasantness. Chloe met his eyes and let him see the fear she could not hide, then let him see it harden. You show up here again, and I file harassment. With whom? He tilted his head toward the dark stairwell below, where no neighbor doors had opened. People hear what they can afford to hear. Her phone buzzed against her palm. Unknown number. She didn't look away from Adrian as she answered. A man's voice, low and fast. Miss Patel, this is Rafi from Belandi Valet. I'm sorry, I couldn't say it outside. Camera in your hall is down, and your elevator has been stopped on 3. Please do not ride alone in that building tonight. Adrian's expression flickered, the first crack in his composure. Chloe kept her voice even. Thank you for the message. You were not meant to receive that call, Adrian said after she hung up. She stepped back one stair. Then your night got worse. The apartment chain rattled softly from inside as Arav tested it. Adrian glanced toward the sound, and his smile vanished. By dawn, he said, each word measured. I expect a payment plan signed in person, at your clinic. Public places help everyone stay polite. He turned and descended with unhurried steps, one hand trailing the rail, as if the building belonged to him, and he was gracious enough to leave it intact. Chloe waited until the front door closed downstairs, then ran the last steps and knocked their pattern. Arav opened only after she said the code word they used during power outages. He was in an old-school hoodie, jaw tight, eyes too alert for 16. Their mother sat on the edge of the bed with her shawl around her shoulders, insulin pen on the nightstand, trying to look less frightened than she was. Chloe checked the locks twice, then wedged a chair under the knob despite the chain. She called non-emergency police and reported the harassment, gave Adrian's name and the exact timestamp, and got a reference number from a bored dispatcher who promised a follow-up when available. She wrote the number on the back of a rent notice and tucked it into her wallet. External record. Thin, but real. By 4:40 a.m., sleep had become a rumor. She sat at the kitchen table in dry clothes with instant coffee gone cold, reviewing numbers under the weak overhead bulb. Rent, insulin, transit, school fees, debt notices that multiplied faster than shifts. At 5:15, she texted Nia, her friend from clinic triage, 3 words. Need protocol help, urgent. Nia replied in 30 seconds. I'm on at 7, use line 3. Rain kept hammering the windows as dawn dragged itself over Queens. Chloe left at 6:10 with her hair still damp, bruise hidden under long sleeves, and the non-emergency report number written again in pen inside her wrist cuff. She chose the longer route with better lighting and checked reflections in storefront glass every half block. The black sedan appeared once in her periphery near Northern Boulevard, then vanished at the next light. The clinic's side entrance smelled of bleach and wet umbrellas. By 6:52, the waiting room had filled with coughing children, tired night workers, and an elderly couple arguing softly over prescription refill dates. Chloe signed in for per diem, clipped on her badge, and started triage prep with hands that were steady by discipline alone. Blood pressure cuffs, thermometer covers, forms in 2 languages. She could survive 10-hour shifts on muscle memory. At 7:18, the front doors opened, and Adrian walked in, carrying a leather folio. Coat immaculate, smile public. He did not lower his voice. Miss Patel, he called across the waiting room. Perhaps you can explain to these good people why someone trusted with medication access has defaulted on $22,000 of lawful debt. Conversation stalled. A mother holding a toddler turned to stare. A man near the window muttered, "That her?" as if Chloe were a headline. Heat climbed her neck, but she kept charting the patient in front of her and finished the blood pressure reading before she looked up. Sir, she said in her clinic voice, formal and clear. "You are not authorized in staff space. Step back behind the line." He lifted the folio and read from a printed sheet, louder. "Notice of delinquency, outstanding balance, non-compliance with repayment structure, repeated evasion." Nia appeared at the medroom doorway, took one look at Chloe's face, and held up the internal desk phone. Chloe moved to the counter, pressed extension 3 and said with practiced neutrality, "Medication verification request, external provider confirmation needed." Nia understood instantly. Connecting now. Line clicked. Recording app armed on Nia's end. Live backup started. Adrian leaned in, smiling for the room. "Do you understand what happens when paperwork says you owe and you cannot pay?" Chloe angled her body so her ID badge and the wall clock were both visible to the security camera over reception. "I understand forged paperwork when I see it." His eyes narrowed. "Careful." "No," she said, loud enough for 3 rows of chairs. "You said there were buyers for people who missed your schedule. You said my brother's walk to school was collateral. Say it again so everyone hears exactly what business you run." The waiting room went very quiet. Nia's pen stopped moving over intake forms. Adrian's politeness thinned. "Your little brother should travel with company," he said softly, still smiling. "Queens has accidents." Chloe kept him talking, each second a risk calculation. "Like Milo at the bus stop? The man in the charcoal coat? Was that your accident too?" His gaze snapped to hers, surprised she knew the name. Then contempt settled in. "That was a message," he said. "You were supposed to learn obedience when blood hit your hands." Nia's eyes widened. On the line, recording captured every syllable. Chloe lifted her voice. "And my renewal contract?" "I wrote terms you could never meet," Adrian said, the control finally gone ragged. "You signed where I told you. That is consent." The room erupted in overlapping sound. Someone swearing, a chair scraping, a receptionist gasping. Adrian understood in the same instant what he had admitted. He lunged across the low railing, grabbed Chloe's arm, and yanked her toward the hallway exit. Her hips slammed into metal. Pain burst white at the edge of her vision. "Phone?" he hissed, searching her pockets with one hand. "Give it." She twisted free enough to shove the desk panic button with her palm. Alarm tones snapped through the clinic, sharp and continuous. Adrian's hand disappeared inside his coat and came out with a compact folding blade, not waved, just shone, close to her ribs where cameras might miss the angle. For one terrible beat, she locked in place. Her body remembered the stairwell, the thumb on bruises, the math of being overpowered in narrow spaces. Her fingers went numb. Her breath stuttered high in her chest. Then the front doors opened again and the room's noise collapsed. Luca Belandi crossed the threshold in a dark tailored coat still beaded with rain, 2 security men already fanning wide behind him. He took in the scene once, Adrian's grip on Chloe, blade low, alarm blaring, and his expression did not change. That calm was worse than shouting. "Lock this block," he said, voice low, barely contained. "Get medical. No civilians near her." His security chief moved first, a broad-shouldered woman with braided hair and a plain black suit. She hit Adrian from the side with controlled force, drove his knife hand into the counter edge, and pinned him against the tile before he could recover balance. The blade clattered away under a chair. Another guard kicked it farther and covered the waiting room with one raised palm. "Stay seated. Police are incoming." Adrian fought, cursing through clenched teeth. "You can't touch me in a clinic." Luca stopped an arm's length from Chloe, dark eyes on her face, not her torn sleeve, not the crowd. "Are you injured?" She heard herself answer from far away. Hip, arm, I'm standing. Stay with me, he said. Look at me. Her vision narrowed and widened in pulses. Somewhere outside, sirens started to climb toward them. Luca lifted one hand, waited for her nod, then touched her elbow just long enough to guide her behind him. He turned his head slightly toward his chief without taking his eyes off Adrian. Katerina, he said, hold him for major crimes. Full chain of custody. Yes, sir. Chloe's knees finally threatened to fold. Luca's voice dropped half a register, meant only for her. You did well. Keep breathing. Do you understand me? Chloe forced air into her lungs until the room stopped tilting and gave him one short nod. I understand. Good. Luca turned without urgency, which made every movement around him sharpen. Katerina, blade in an evidence sleeve, not a pocket. Get the folio bagged. Pull this clinic's camera archive from 10 minutes before entry to now. I want the reception audio preserved before anyone forgets how to export it. Katerina already had a gloved hand on Adrian's wrist and a knee braced against his shoulder. On it. Adrian twisted against the floor restraint, face flushed with fury and humiliation. You're overreaching, Belandi. Luca did not raise his voice. You brought a weapon into a medical facility and threatened staff in front of witnesses. You reached first. The waiting room had gone still in the way crowds did when fear and relief collided. A toddler started crying. The mother who had been holding him earlier shifted her body to shield his view. Nia moved from the medroom threshold to Chloe's side, one hand steady on her back, the other holding the clinic handset with the recording line still open. I mirrored the call, Nia said quietly. Local copy in cloud, time-stamped. Chloe swallowed through a throat that still felt too tight. Don't let it sit on one device. It won't. Nia looked at Luca, then at Katerina, reading hierarchy in 2 seconds. Who am I handing it to? Detective Soria, Major Crimes, Katerina answered. He's 2 minutes out. You hand it directly, and you state where and when the file was created. Adrian gave a bitter laugh from the tile. You think one recording fixes this? Chloe found her voice and kept it level. No. The recording starts it. A paramedic team pushed through the front doors, one of them the same woman who had worked the bus stop overnight. She recognized Chloe, took in her stance, and moved in fast. Sit, she ordered, guiding her onto a triage chair near the vital station. Now. I'm fine. You're upright. That isn't the same thing. The paramedic cut a quick glance toward Luca. Give me 2 feet of space. He stepped back immediately. What do you need? Quiet and light. She knelt, checking Chloe's pupils, then pressed gently along her hip where she had hit the railing. Pain flared, and Chloe hissed. Contusion at minimum. Maybe soft tissue strain, arm. Chloe lifted it. Angry red marks already darkened where Adrian had gripped her. The paramedic wrapped a cold compress and secured it. Any dizziness now? Less. Any nausea? No. Good. You still need imaging if the hip locks up. She softened half a degree. You did right hitting the panic button. 22 minutes after the alarm first sounded, uniformed officers arrived with Major Crimes behind them. Detective Soria was compact, gray-templed and efficient, his suit damp from rain. He took one look at Adrian pinned on the floor, the recovered blade now sealed in clear plastic, and the cluster of witnesses waiting to be interviewed, then opened a legal pad and started building sequence. Who initiated the call line? He asked. I did, Chloe said. Why? To create a live record of a threat pattern tied to forged debt documents. His gaze sharpened, impressed despite himself. You expected escalation? I expected denial. I planned for proof. Nia handed over her phone and read the chain details exactly. Time started, app used, cloud route, no edits. Katerina added the blade recovery point, folio seizure point, and camera export protocol with clinical precision. The clinic manager, pale and shaken, confirmed panic alarm logs and access entry time for Adrian's arrival. Soria turned to Adrian. You want counsel before I continue? Adrian smiled at him like they were acquaintances at a fundraiser. I want competent policing, not theater. You'll get procedure, Soria said. Stand him up. As officers pulled Adrian to his feet, he looked past them at Chloe. The expression was polite again, almost gentle, which made it colder. This is expensive, Ms. Patel. For everyone. Luca stepped half a pace into his line of sight. You will speak through counsel from here. Adrian's jaw flexed, but he said nothing else as they moved him out in cuffs, folio tagged, blade logged, witness list attached to the arrest sheet. Through the rain-smeared glass, Chloe watched him duck into the back of a cruiser and felt her body register belatedly that the immediate threat had broken. Then her phone vibrated. Arav. She answered on the first ring. You okay? Are you? His voice cracked on the second word. There are 2 women downstairs with security badges. They said they're from Belandi Protection and asked if they can stay in the hall. Ma is scared. Chloe looked up sharply. Luca was already watching her, as if he could hear both ends of the line through her face alone. Put one of them on, Chloe said. A calm female voice came on. Miss Patel, this is Dina, field team. We're posted outside your apartment until you direct otherwise. Your mother has her insulin and your brother's in the unit with both locks engaged. We also have the non-emergency case number you filed overnight, linked to this incident for major crimes. That detail hit Chloe hard. Someone had found her thin paper trail and anchored it to a real investigation. Thank you, she said, the words rougher than she intended. When the call ended, Luca spoke quietly. Your family is secured. 2 female officers on your floor, 1 in the lobby. No entry to your unit without your voice authorization. You sent them before I asked. I sent them when a knife appeared. She held his gaze. That is exactly the problem. A flicker crossed his face, not anger, not apology, something more restrained. Understood. We'll discuss terms where you can sit, breathe, and think without an audience. He offered his hand to help her stand, palm open, waiting. She took it because her hip protested when she rose, not because she trusted him yet. His grip was careful and brief. Outside, the rain had thickened into a gray curtain that blurred storefronts into streaks of neon and brake light. 2 dark SUVs idled at the curb, engines low, wipers sweeping in disciplined rhythm. Katerina opened the rear door herself and scanned the street before nodding Chloe in. Nia squeezed her shoulder once before she got in. I'm coming after shift, Nia said, and I made 3 backups. Bring all 3. You know I will. The drive into Manhattan moved through wet avenues and police radio chatter. Chloe sat angled toward the window with an ice pack against her hip, watching Queens slide away in reflections. Shuttered pharmacies, takeout signs, a laundromat still open at midday because bills did not care about weather. Across from her, Luca took calls in clipped phrases. Hospital report on Milo. Good. Keep him under guard, but not under pressure. Trace the forged chain through shell accounts, not just signatures. Counsel list for Ms. Patel. Independent options only. He ended each call within seconds. No wasted language, no visible strain, yet the force of his control filled the vehicle more than sound did. Chloe recognized that dynamic from clinic emergencies. The person who stayed calm often decided who made it through the hour. By the time they crossed the bridge, her adrenaline had started to drain, leaving ache in its place. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Ate, took insulin. Come when safe. She pressed the screen to her chest for a second, eyes closed. Belandi's penthouse sat high above the rain line, marble lobby gleaming under muted chandeliers. Security layered so smoothly it looked like hospitality until one noticed every camera angle and every checkpoint. A woman in a charcoal suit met them at the private elevator and introduced herself as Mara, house manager. Another woman, older, silver-haired, waiting by the elevator exit with a medical bag, introduced herself as Dr. Imani Reyes, trauma physician on retainer. Ms. Patel, I need 10 minutes with you now, Dr. Reyes said. Then you can decide what comes next. The exam room they used had been converted from a guest office. Soft lighting, sealed supplies, no decorative clutter. Dr. Reyes checked range of motion, palpated the hip again, taped the shoulder where strain had started to set in, and documented every bruise with Chloe's verbal consent and timestamp photos. No fracture signs at present, she said, peeling off gloves. But if pain spikes or weight-bearing changes, we image tonight. You have acute stress response and soft tissue trauma. Rest is not optional. Rest is not billable, Chloe muttered. Dr. Reyes gave her a look that suggested she had heard that line from too many women. Safety first, invoices second. I'm sending anti-inflammatory meds and hydration. Eat something with protein before you decide anything legal. When Chloe stepped into the adjoining sitting room, warm light struck crystal and dark wood in expensive, controlled lines. Floor-to-ceiling windows turned the city into a wet electric grid. On the low table sat 3 sealed evidence bags. The compact blade, Adrian's leather folio, and her navy scarf, now folded and tagged. Dried blood turned almost black at one edge. Her chest tightened at the sight of it. Luca stood by the window with Katerina and a woman Chloe did not know. Sharp-featured, late 40s, files under one arm. Katerina made introductions. Elena Costa, forensic accountant, independent consultant for financial fraud reconstruction. Elena inclined her head. Ms. Patel, I reviewed the top layer of those documents in transit. The renewal terms are predatory on their face, and 2 signatures appear mechanically transferred. I can map the full chain if you authorize access. Do it, Chloe said. But copies to me and to independent counsel, not just your office. Agreed. Katerina set a tablet on the table. Detective Soria requested a formal statement extension. Also, the valet who contacted you, Rafi, provided his statement and security footage from your building block. It places Adrian at your address before dawn. The thread tightened into something solid at last. He testified? He did, Katerina said. He asked me to tell you he's sorry he froze in the moment. Chloe exhaled slowly. Tell him he warned me anyway. That mattered. Once Katerina and Elena stepped out to handle calls, the room quieted. Rain traced the glass in thin lines. Luca remained where he was, hands behind his back, posture still formal despite the hour and the chaos. You may stay here tonight, he said. 2 female staff outside your door, 1 inside the suite if you request. Your family can be moved to a secure unit within the hour or kept in place with rotating coverage. Your choice. Document every order you just gave. It's being logged. I want copies. You'll have them. She moved to the table and touched the plastic over her scarf. And I want this returned when forensics is done. Luca's gaze dropped to the tag, then lifted to her face. That scarf is evidence in an assault sequence. But yes, it comes back to you. It was my father's. Something in his expression altered so slightly. She might have missed it if she had not spent years reading patients at the edge of bad news. He was a paramedic, she continued, voice steadier now that she had begun. He died on shift. Warehouse fire in Brooklyn, 8 years ago. I kept the scarf because it still smelled like him for a long time. Last night I used it on Milo because there wasn't anything else dry, and I don't regret that. But I am not losing it to a file room. Luca looked at the rain, then back at her. You won't lose it. She studied him. You recognized it at the bus stop, didn't you? A long pause. I recognized the way you tied pressure under panic. The scarf confirmed what kind of training lived in your hands. That was an answer and not an answer. Chloe let it stand for now. Then hear mine clearly. If you want me under this protection protocol, it is not ownership. It is contract. Every interaction documented. Independent legal counsel of my choosing. No contact with my family without my consent, unless there is immediate threat. And stop calling this a favor. His voice stayed low, controlled. What do I call it? An obligation created by a war I didn't start. He held her gaze, the room silent except for rain and the faint hum of climate control. Then he gave one curt nod. Done. She felt the power shift, small but real, like a lock turning from the inside. Good, she said. Then we work. And for the first time since the clinic alarm had split the morning, her hands stopped shaking. Luca watched that change happen and did not crowd it. He only shifted his weight, as if he were recalibrating around a new perimeter she had drawn on marble and glass. You need food, he said. Then statements. Order matters, she replied. I speak to my mother first. He inclined his head once and signaled toward the hallway. Mara appeared almost immediately, efficient and silent, and led Chloe to a smaller sitting room off the main salon where a tray had been set out. Lentil soup, toast, sliced fruit, water with condensation beating down the stemless glass. Domestic warmth staged inside fortress architecture. Chloe stayed standing until Mara connected a secure video line and stepped back. Dina's face filled the screen first, earpiece visible, posture alert in Chloe's apartment hallway. Per your protocol, visual confirmation, she said. She turned the camera. Chloe saw her mother wrapped in the blue shawl by the kitchen table and Arav in his hoodie, with his math workbook open, pencil still in hand as if he had refused to move from routine no matter who stood guard outside. Chloe, her mother said, you're pale. I'm okay. Chloe sat down because her knees had started to wobble again. Did you eat? Her mother gave her that look reserved for children pretending adulthood solved everything. Yes. Dina watched me. Your brother made eggs and nearly burned the first pan. Arav lifted his chin with wounded dignity. The second pan was perfect. Despite the ache in her hip, Chloe smiled. The room loosened by 1 degree. Keep both locks on. Don't answer the door unless it's Dina or the woman with her, and they confirm the code. Arav nodded. I know the code. Say it anyway. He did correctly, then leaned closer to the camera. Are you coming home tonight? Chloe hesitated, aware of Luca in the doorway behind the screen's edge, distant enough to be respectful and close enough to intervene if needed. Not tonight. I'm somewhere secure. Arav's gaze slid past the camera frame, sharp in that adolescent way that missed nothing and pretended to miss everything. With him. With a legal team, she said. And a doctor. That satisfied him enough to sit back. After another minute of practical instructions, insulin timing, charger location, school alarm backup, she ended the call and stared at the dark screen until her reflection settled. "You gave clear orders," Luca said from the doorway. "I learned from necessity. You learned command under pressure." She turned to face him fully, spoon untouched in the soup. "I learned because no one else was coming." His expression tightened, subtle but real. "I came." "At the clinic," she said. "Not at the bus stop." The words landed between them with the weight of wet wool. Luca moved into the room, stopped 2 steps away, and kept his hands visible at his sides. "At the bus stop, we had active uncertainty. Milo was already hit. My team had eyes on 2 possible exits and 1 suspected second attacker. If I stepped out too early, they scattered. And I became acceptable risk in your calculation." His jaw flexed. "You became the variable I misjudged." She let that sit. Rain traced slow lines down the tall windows, turning the city beyond into fractured light. "Do you hear yourself? You say protection like law, then talk about variables like I'm inventory." "I hear it." His voice dropped, roughened by restraint. "I am telling you the truth, not a polished lie." Truth, she thought, could wound cleanly when spoken by men used to command. She picked up the spoon, mostly to give her hands a task, and took 1 swallow of soup that tasted of cumin and heat and sudden hunger. Her body reminded her it had not eaten since half a protein bar. She hated that vulnerability, hated that he could see it. Luca noticed her wince when she shifted in the chair. "May I look at your shoulder wrap?" The request, not the movement, caught her off guard. He waited. She gave a stiff nod. He stepped in, careful, and touched the tape edge with 2 fingers, adjusting where it had started to peel against her damp skin. His hands were warm, precise, and immediately gone. "Too tight?" he asked. "No." "Pain level?" "Manageable." Their eyes met, and the collision was as unwelcome as it was undeniable. Fear that had not left her bones, and a pull toward the one person in the room who could quiet a city block with a sentence. She hated the geometry of that. She hated how her pulse reacted anyway. A soft knock broke the moment. Katerina entered with a tablet, followed by Elena carrying 2 slim file boxes and a portable scanner. "Detective Soria on encrypted line," Katerina said. "Assistant District Attorney wants immediate victim affidavit before arraignment intake closes." Chloe set the spoon down. "Put him through." Soria's voice came crisp through the speaker. "Ms. Patel, we're filing felony assault, extortion, coercion, document fraud. Defense counsel is arguing Mr. Voss's statements were provoked and therefore unreliable. We disagree, but I need your direct affidavit tonight to lock pattern and intent." "He threatened my brother by route and time," Chloe said. "Put that in." "It's in draft. I also need confirmation that the bus stop incident was named by him as a message during your recorded exchange." It was named clearly. "Good. 1 more complication." A paper shuffled on his end. "Defense is pushing emergency release on technical grounds tied to prior bond status. Hearing in 40 minutes by remote docket. You can attend virtually from your location." Luca's gaze went hard. She doesn't need to be in visual range of him tonight. Soria answered without deference. "With respect, Mr. Belandi, her live testimony will influence conditions." Chloe looked from one man to the other and felt the old pattern rising. Power negotiating over her body while calling it strategy. She stood despite the protest in her hip. I attend. My choice. Luca held her stare for a long second, then nodded once. Then we control conditions. By 6:10 p.m., the rain had thinned to a cold mist that silvered the glass, and the hearing interface glowed on a wall-mounted screen in the secure conference room. One line of temporal certainty, one breath before impact. Chloe sat at the table with Dr. Reyes's ice wrap hidden beneath a dark cardigan, Elena to her left with document exhibits queued, Katerina by the door, and Luca standing behind her chair like a column of controlled force. Adrian appeared on screen from a holding room, suit jacket replaced by county gray, hair still immaculate, smile still practiced. Even pixelated, the jaw twitch was there. His attorney spoke first in polished legal cadence about misunderstandings, emotional distress, and an overzealous private actor, contaminating witness perception. Chloe listened, fingers flat on the table so no one could see them curl. When the judge asked for victim statement, Chloe leaned toward the microphone. Her voice came out steady. My name is Chloe Patel. The defendant used forged renewal documents to manufacture debt terms he knew I could not meet. He came to my residence after midnight, interfered with building lighting, and threatened consequences if I did not appear publicly at my workplace. At my clinic, he repeated threats involving my minor brother's school route, admitted structuring terms to force default, and admitted the bus stop stabbing was a message to control my behavior. Those admissions were captured in a live, time-stamped recording with verified chain of custody. He then physically grabbed me and displayed a blade in a medical facility. Adrian tilted his head, smiling as if she were being dramatic for an audience. Ms. Patel is frightened and confused. She misheard context. Chloe did not look at him. She looked at the judge. I am frightened. That does not make me confused. The attorney objected to tone. The judge overruled and asked Chloe if she sought specific conditions. Yes, she said. No direct or third-party contact with me, my mother, or my brother. No approach to my home, my workplace, or my brother's school corridor. Surrender of travel documents. Electronic monitoring if released. And full preservation orders on his financial records and communications. Adrian's smile dropped a fraction. You think you can bury me behind security men? Before anyone else could speak, Chloe turned her head just enough to meet his eyes through the screen. No. I think the law can finally see you. Silence held for one beat. Then Adrian leaned forward, and the politeness peeled back. You belong in systems you can't control, Chloe. Men like me write the terms. Luca's hand closed around the back of her chair, knuckles whitening, voice low and barely contained when he addressed the screen. You will refer to her as Ms. Patel. You will speak through counsel. She is under my protection, and every inch of this process is documented. The judge rapped once for order, but did not rebuke him. Instead, she fixed Adrian with a flat stare and issued conditions in clipped language. Remand pending full hearing, no contact of any kind, expedited forensic review of debt instruments, witness protection coordination with major crimes. The feed ended with a click. For a moment, no one moved. Chloe realized she had been bracing for impact that never came, shoulders lifted, jaw locked. Dr. Reyes touched her wrist lightly. Breathe down, not up. She obeyed, lungs burning as they reopened. Elena slid a printed acknowledgement across the table for signature. Chloe read every line before she signed. Then she handed the pen back and looked at Luca. You do not speak for me in court again unless I ask, she said. His gaze stayed on her, the storm in it banked but present. Understood. You can stand with me. You do not stand in front of me. A beat passed. Understood. Katerina returned from the hallway with her phone raised. Update from Soria. Adrian transferred to Central Holding under the no-contact order. Rafi's statement corroborated. Building super confirmed the hallway bulb was deliberately removed, prints pending. Chloe closed her eyes briefly, not from weakness, but from the blunt relief of threads tightening into record. Physical evidence logged. External calls answered. The strange details named and filed where denial would have less room to breathe. When she opened her eyes, Luca was still there, still watching her as if the city might crack if he blinked at the wrong moment. She rose carefully from the chair and held his gaze until he had no option but to hear her exactly. "You don't get to own me," she said quietly. "You get to choose whether you're the man who keeps his word when I set terms." His answer came just as quiet, stripped of performance. "Then I choose that. Then I choose that." The words settled in the conference room like a contract already signed, and Chloe studied his face to see whether he understood the cost of them. He did not step closer. He did not soften them with charm. He only held her gaze and let the silence stand. Katerina's phone buzzed again, and she checked the screen. Detective Soria is downstairs with updated filings and a request for one more signature tonight. He says it cannot wait if we want asset freezes before morning. "Bring him up," Chloe said. By 8:40 p.m., Soria sat across from her at the long table with rain still darkening the shoulders of his suit. A cardboard evidence courier box at his feet and 2 stamped packets spread in front of him. He moved with the efficient patience of a man who had spent decades translating fear into paperwork that would survive defense attorneys. "First," he said, sliding one packet toward her, "your non-emergency harassment report from last night has now been formally attached to the felony complaint and witness timeline. It stopped being a dead-end call." A tight knot under Chloe's ribs eased a fraction. So that reference number mattered. It did. He tapped a second packet. Second, emergency financial orders were granted. Accounts linked to Voss Holdings and 3 shell entities are frozen pending fraud review. Ms. Costa's chain map gave us probable cause faster than usual. Elena, still standing by the window with her files, nodded once. His paper trail was sloppy where he assumed no one would look. Soria reached for the box and opened it. Inside were sealed bags and printed logs. The compact blade, Adrian's folio, building maintenance photos, a copy of the clinic panic alarm report, and a still frame from a hallway camera showing Adrian on Chloe's floor at 12:43 a.m. next to the unscrewed bulb. He handed her the chain of custody sheet. "Physical evidence status," he said. "Blade processed for prints and trace. Prints match Adrian. Folio scanned and preserved. Original held for trial. Hallway bulb swabbed and logged, his prints on glass and metal threads. Elevator control panel on 3 had tool marks from a magnetic override. Building super confirmed no authorized maintenance request. Your clinic camera archive has been duplicated to major crime servers." Every strange detail that had kept her awake now existed in black ink and barcodes. And the footsteps on the stairwell? Soria flipped one page. Second set belonged to his runner, male, 31. He waited 1 floor below and left when your call activity spiked. He's in custody on conspiracy and intimidation counts. Katerina leaned against the wall, arms folded. No loose ends on scene mechanics. Soria's expression shifted, gentler. One more outcome. The young man from the bus stop, Milo Caruso, gave full testimony this afternoon. He identified Voss's intermediary who staged the attack as coercive signaling, not random street crime. That links your recording to an independent witness. Chloe closed her eyes for a beat. Milo alive. Coherent. Speaking. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Soria said. Sign these, and I can keep him remanded through arraignment expansion tomorrow. She signed where indicated, reading each line first. When she finished, Soria stood, gathered the packets, and paused by Luca. Your valet did the right thing in the end. I know, Luca said. After Soria left, the penthouse quiet returned, muted and expensive, rain ticking softly against the glass. Mara entered with tea and said, Rafi is in the service corridor. He asked if Ms. Patel would permit a brief apology before he returns to his shift. Chloe glanced at Luca. He gave a small nod and stayed where he was. Rafi came in wringing his cap between both hands, uniform pressed, but eyes rimmed red from a day without sleep. Miss Patel, he said, voice unsteady. I should have warned you sooner. At the bus stop, I saw Adrian's spotter by your block. I was told by a Belandi floor manager not to break cover because surveillance was active. I obeyed for 6 minutes. Then I called anyway when I realized he was already inside your building. I'm sorry for those 6 minutes. Chloe heard the shame in him and recognized it. She had lived on delayed decisions too. You warned me when it counted, she said. If you hadn't called, I might have taken that elevator. His shoulders dropped as if he had been bracing for a verdict. Thank you. When he left, Chloe turned to Luca. Your manager ordered him to stay silent. My manager followed perimeter protocol, Luca said. Protocol protected operation, not you, in that moment. That is on me. The honesty stung and steadied her at once. Then rewrite the protocol. I already did. By the second week of October, the rain had finally broken into clear, cold mornings, and Chloe sat in family court under fluorescent light, with Arav beside her and an ADA at her other shoulder. No remote screen this time, no distance. Adrian was brought in through the side door in county khaki, cuffed, expression flattened by the weeks he had spent discovering that polished menace looked smaller under sworn testimony. The judge moved through findings in a measured cadence. Document fraud established by forensic review, extortion pattern corroborated by audio evidence and witness testimony. Assault in a medical facility confirmed by video and physical trace. Guardianship claim denied with prejudice as fraudulent on its face. Then came sentencing terms and restitution orders. Prison time. Protective orders extended. Mandatory no contact across direct, indirect, and proxy channels. Debt instruments tied to defendant's forged renewal structure are declared void ab initio, the judge said, gavel hand steady. Any associated collection actions are permanently barred. Arab's fingers tightened around the edge of the bench. Chloe placed her hand over his without looking away from the bench. She needed to hear each word land. After adjournment, the ADA handed her a stamped packet. Certified copies. Keep one at home, one at work, one with your counsel. In 3 places, Chloe said, and almost smiled. In the hallway, Adrian looked at her once as officers turned him toward transport. No smile now, no polite threat wrapped in manners. Just a long, empty stare that slid away when Luca stepped into view behind her shoulder. Luca said nothing. He did not need to. That afternoon, she signed a lease in her own name in a secured building with working hallway lights, verified cameras, and a superintendent who walked her through lock systems twice because she asked him to. Luca's team had provided a short list and paid the first month under Witness Protection Reimbursement Authority. But the signature on every line was hers. The bank account listed was hers, and the key card was placed directly into her palm by the property manager. Mara arrived with 2 staff members carrying labeled boxes from the penthouse evidence cabinet. Released property, she said, reading from a manifest. Navy wool scarf, forensics complete and cleared. Photocopies of all signed affidavits. Clinic recording on encrypted drive plus 2 backups. Police report index, including your initial non-emergency call. Return of personal tote and contents, logged from scene processing. Chloe opened the top box and touched the scarf. Cleaned, dried, still a little rough at the edge where the knot had bitten down on pressure and panic. She pressed it to her face and caught a trace of detergent and old smoke. Memory and present stitched together. Her mother walked through the new apartment slowly, palm brushing the kitchen counter as if confirming reality by texture. "No peeling paint," she murmured, "and the window closes all the way." Arav claimed the smaller bedroom, then came back out and said to Chloe, trying for casual and failing, "I can walk to school from here with other kids on the route. You'll still text when you leave and when you arrive." He rolled his eyes, then nodded. "Yes, ma'am." 3 nights later, Chloe stood in a clinic room that smelled like antiseptic and coffee, pinning her badge to fresh scrubs while Nia sorted intake forms with theatrical disapproval. "You are now the only person I know," Nia said, "who negotiated terms with a man like Belandi and got all of them in writing." Chloe adjusted her stethoscope. "I got most of them. I'm still checking compliance." Nia snorted. "You're terrifying when you're organized." The new clinic had been funded through a Belandi charitable trust, but the governance binder on her desk listed an independent board, external audits, and clinical autonomy clauses Elena had helped draft line by line. Protective logistics had become infrastructure, not leverage. At 7:02 p.m., after her shift ended, Chloe stepped onto the clinic's back terrace, where city wind carried a clean autumn bite. Luca waited by the railing in a dark coat, hands bare, posture formal, until he saw her limp slightly from the old hip bruise and then softened by a degree. "You pushed too long today," he said. "You had my schedule?" "I had security perimeter times, not your chart load." She believed him. That mattered more than she expected. She moved beside him, shoulder to shoulder, both of them facing the street 15 floors below, where headlights streamed in patient lines. "Adrian is gone," she said. "The orders are active. My family is housed. The debt is void. The evidence is filed. This is closure, Luca. My mother's insulin refill is filled, coverage is locked on auto-renewal, and our caregiving rota is finally stable. That emergency is resolved." "Yes." She turned to him. "And safety is still work." "Daily work?" His mouth curved, not quite a smile. "I know." She took a breath that reached all the way down. "Then hear my last condition." "I'm listening." "If we do this, we do it in the open. No hidden surveillance on my family. No decisions about me made in rooms I'm not in. You ask before you touch me when I'm hurt. You stand with me, not over me." His answer came without hesitation. "Agreed." A long moment passed, the city loud below and the terrace quiet around them. He held out his hand, palm up, offering rather than taking. "Stay," he said, voice low, "because you choose to." Chloe looked at his hand, then at the skyline she had fought to keep from swallowing her whole, and placed her fingers in his. "I choose," she said, steady and clear, "with terms we both keep." They stood there as evening settled over glass and stone, not rescued, not owned, but aligned. Two people who understood that danger did not vanish. It was managed, named, and met together, one deliberate choice at a time.